So I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of updates on kind of where we are with things. I know it's been quite a while. So much has changed. Gosh, I don't even know the date of my last video. I'm pretty sure it was like right after placement. So I just have to be really careful because a lot of what kind of goes on is confidential. Not only for our foster placement, our foster son, but also his family, and just considering the situation that they're in and trying to navigate the privacy boundaries and all those kind of things. I just have to be careful what I share, which I didn't realize. Maybe that's why it's also so hard to find a lot of information about the foster process once you're placed with the foster, because literally every case is so specific to the case. There's all these generalities, there's all these things that could happen, but everyone is really specific. So I'm going to be as specific to our case as possible, and then that way you at least are up to date on kind of where we are and what we're doing, but you can also take that and compare it to maybe if you have other friends who are foster parents or who are just kind of learning about it. So I just kind of made some notes. I'm gonna refer to my cell phone while I'm making this video. So one of the main things is like a timeline from it's different for everyone, and thankfully there's a lot of Facebook support in terms of groups and things like that that can provide you with a little bit of clarity while you're in the process. But for us, it felt pretty fast. In New Hampshire, as I mentioned in some of my last videos, we had to take part in what's called FACES classes, and they prepare you for a very broad overview of parenting. Basically, they're like parenting classes. How to communicate, how to deal with bio parents, understanding the situation from both the child's perspective and then also the parent's perspective. So those were just beyond helpful. What they didn't really prepare us for was the process afterwards. So after placement, we were like, okay, cool, now what? I think they briefly went over it, but keeping in mind that all the terms that we learned were like a different language. And so, I mean, we have stacks of paperwork that we were printed out. Not to mention that we're going to class after a working day once a week for 6 weeks. So making time to go back through that, and we didn't. We honestly didn't go review back over our materials. Maybe we should have. Maybe this wouldn't feel so new to me. So for in New Hampshire, after placement, what happens is I think it's within 7 days, the state has to meet with the court to solidify whether or not a child should remain in placement. So maybe they're removed, there's different levels, but maybe they're removed because of domestic violence situation between, two parents or a mom and boyfriend or whatever. Maybe they're removed because of sexual allegations from a neighbor, or like maybe a neighbor said something. Whatever it is, or drug abuse or whatever it is, the reason why the child is removed, the state presents this evidence to the court, and then the judge decides whether or not the child should remain in foster care for a period of the next 30 days. So in our particular case, for the reason why our son was removed, the judge said that he should remain in foster care. Cool. So then the next 30 days, then there is another meeting, which the foster parents do not attend, that allows the bio parent to what's called consent, which is basically like pleading guilty or non-guilty to the charges against them. But it's not like a trial by jury kind of charges. It's the state opposing the bio parent, but the state's job is to reunify, is to help the bio parent reunify. So it's a little bit confusing. But at that court hearing, the bio parent has an opportunity to say, yes, what the state is saying is accurate, I consent to that, and I'm willing to work on a case plan. So in our particular case, that's what our foster parents, or our foster son's parents, did. They said that we would do this. Well, one of them did. With every case, most foster children have two people involved. Now, that doesn't mean that they were on the birth certificate. That doesn't mean that, it just means that they admit that this is their child, and that means that they actually have some sort of rights to them, even if they're not on the birth certificate. So this is kind of all new to me too. And I have to be careful what I share about our particular situation, but both of our foster son's parents have two separate cases. So that means that the state would have to terminate parental rights between two different parents. In order for our foster son to be up for adoption, and then we would have the opportunity to say, yes, we'd like to adopt him, and then we would move forward with that process. So before we even get there, that's a 12-month period. And so after the 30 days of where the bio parent has the opportunity to consent and admit to wrongdoing and work towards the case plan that the caseworker has put in place and that the judge approves, then there's these little 3-month called review hearings. There's a 3-month, a 6-month, a 9-month, and then a 12-month. And every review hearing, the bio mom and bio dad get to present information, where the caseworker presents information that says what they're doing to work closer to reunification. And in this process, the parents are legally presented opportunities to visit with their children. This is usually with a supervised visit. So like our particular situation, our foster son's bio mom has 2 visits a week, and they're limited in hours and they're supervised, but it's a really cool thing that they get to maintain that relationship with each other. She's not a stranger to him by any means, so that's good too. And really the point is because these children need to maintain that sort of bond that they might have with their parents. And it's the same whether it's an infant or if it's an older child. So keep that in mind too, that these rules are set in place. And in terms of like phone calls, like we often speak to her on the phone. She calls us, we call her. We have what we most would consider a really good relationship with a bio parent, and that's not common because a lot of bio parents just don't call and don't show up and don't do all those things. So that's not what's happening in our particular case. And so because of that, it's treated just a little bit differently. Like she's not any type of risk to him in any way with his safety or anything like that. And she loves him a lot. But in terms of adoption, that's usually everyone's first question is, well, when do you know if you get to adopt him? Well, that's not really what's happening with our case. You don't know that when you sign up. I mean, when we signed up and they ask you what you want, we're categorized as a pre-adoptive home or a pre-adoptive family. When we did our home study, we made it really clear that we would love to adopt any children in care. But in the process of the, FACES classes and in the home study, everyone that you come in contact with makes it very, very clear that the first 12 months are all about reunification. And I found that it's really, really difficult to focus on reunification if you're always focused on adoption. You can't do 2 things at once, at least my heart can't. And that becomes really, really difficult because if we're always thinking about him and always thinking about what's best for him. But if you kind of shape in your mind what you deem best for him, that picture's going to look really different in court. That picture's going to look really different to the state. And what we know, what research has shown, what we've learned in the classes, and the state provides so much information. There's also other organizations that provide a lot of opportunity to learn more about developmental issues, about bonding, about how to successfully have a bio parent and foster parent relationship. There's a lot of support to learn, and that's really been new to us because it's also very foreign. Mitchell and I come from really strong family homes and family ties where we're really close to our parents and our siblings and our aunts and uncles and cousins and everybody. So it's easy to just, take what you feel is a need, this child that seems to not have support, and be like, oh, well, you're better with my family. When in reality, what's best for that child is to know that they're loved and to experience that with their own family if their own family is willing. And with our foster son, his family is willing. And that's really hard because, you know, we obviously like our family. We think that they're the best. And it would be easy, I would think, to kind of pretend his family doesn't exist. Well, we can't ignore what we know has been good for him, what we see research showing is great for children. And if any of you out there listening are adopted or experience any type of foster care or being cared for by even a family member or a loved one, you might be able to relate to some of those things. I can't relate personally. I can only relate by having friends that have shared that with me, that have been adopted or experienced any type of foster care situation or guardianship situation from, you know, aunts and uncles and neighbors and parents' best friends kind of thing. And so keeping all of that in mind while also providing a normal, stable home for this child. So to us, our everyday life is really just like normal. Like we spend time and hang out like a family. It's what he knows is normal, and he doesn't know that the various appointments and the various visits and the things like that are anything different than, you know, like going to school every day. He has all of his consistencies, which are pretty consistent. And so for that, I'm really glad for him. I'm really glad that he has that stability. And in terms of kind of what to expect, we just had our 3-month review. So even though we've been placed with him since April, and it's almost the end of September now, I mean, his 6-month review isn't until December. So every 3 months we kind of get to know, like, okay, well, this is what we can kind of sort of expect for the next 3 months. And that's really kind of how it is. I know that when I share that with people, their eyes like bug out of their head and they're like, oh my gosh, like you guys are angels on earth, or you guys are saints, or I don't know how you could do it or how you could. And honestly, like, we don't either. Like every time that we're faced with kind of that thought process, we just remember that we're literally only here because Jesus asked us to be. And I just want to make that so clear, because I don't have an explanation otherwise. There is nothing special about Mitchell and I. There is not some like Mother Teresa bone in my body that has multiplied. We were just faced with a situation where I really felt like we were asked, will you take care of this child? And I have to remember, we remind ourselves on a daily basis that our role in all of this big story is just to care for him, is just to provide him love and stability and consistency. And we do that really, really well. Like, we're really, really great parents. I am totally going to toot our own horn, because it comes so easy to love him and to care for him. And in a way, we feel like I don't have biological children, but that I can't imagine loving a child anymore. So I don't feel like just because he's our foster son that he's not getting all of it. He gets all of it. So that's really great for him. But it has nothing to do with any type of good or better in us. It's literally just Jesus, because that is unexplainable. I mean, we can't even comprehend it most days. We just kind of take it day by day. And you know, when you have a baby that gets dropped off at your house and he needs to eat and take a bath and sleep and he needs clothes, you just kind of start to just make it work. And if you focus and you think about, like, this is not even my kid, or you're gonna be really frustrated. And I've been there. I've done that over the last few months. I've had those moments where, you know, he is sick so often and I've had to take off so much work and I don't see progress happening on mom's side immediately, or how I want it to look or whatever. And I get frustrated. But what I have to remember is that he doesn't know any different. He has a cold and he can't go to school. So what, am I just gonna be mad at him? No, you just make it work. And it really boils down to mindset, which I've learned over the last few months, and it's kind of been solidified, impacts everything. Your mindset totally impacts your attitude, and the way you choose to perceive things impacts your actions. And I'm responsible for that. That's something that's in my control. That's something that is a total, it's totally, you know, I can control that. It's hard, and it takes a lot of work, but I've recognized that when I'm not working in that area, all this other stuff starts to spin out of control. And so in terms of foster care as a whole, there is a giant need. There are so many ways that people can be involved in foster care, whether that is just through respite care, where you just take kids on the weekends for other foster families or during vacation. Childcare is a really, really big thing. The state does provide childcare, but a lot of the childcare facilities are full. And so when you're placed with a new foster, you don't have immediate childcare. And so if someone is placed with a foster and doesn't have vacation to take or something, that can be a really, really large need. So volunteers, that you don't have to have any special certifications, but any volunteers that are willing to kind of come alongside foster families as a form of childcare, is super, super helpful, because you also have to think about the funds that, you know, like paying for all of the things can become a burden for some. And so I've heard, we're in a lot of the different foster groups and stuff, and that, you know, a lot of people have bio children as well. And so when you start, you know, paying a babysitter for 3 kids, that can be kind of overwhelming. And so, yeah, just like there's so many ways that you can help without actually being a foster parent, which is really exciting, because there's ways that we can also support our foster community without taking on more foster children. But as a whole, the process is, you know, pretty outlined. I'm going to leave a link in this post for like what you can download if you want to read a little bit more about each hearing, about each role, each person's role, all the different titles that I've mentioned over the last couple of videos. But let me know what other questions that you have. Again, I have to be really careful what I share about our particular case. But in terms of adoption, like, we would love to adopt, but that is not even on the table right now. As long as our foster son's bio parents are making progress. And so she is making progress. And in terms of when that would be on, you know, the table, I guess, it's much closer to like a 9 and 12 month hearing, based on progress. There can also be extensions filed for 45 to 90 days, depending on the case. That's the judge's approval. And there's a lot of things that can change. Even if the judge, you know, deems that terminating parental rights is what's best in this particular case, then there can be an appeal, which that can take up to 30 to 60 days, I think, before like he would be up for adoption. The parents can appeal. And then you also have the kicker of relatives. So relatives can kind of come out of the woodwork and present themselves as an opportunity for placement. And a lot of times relatives get primary placement over foster parents just because they're blood related. So there's a lot of factors to factor in. It's a lot of things that you have to just to consider, and to just kind of guard your heart that you don't, you love unconditionally and carelessly, just with everything you have, fiercely. But you also have to guard your heart in terms of the expectations that you set. And just make sure that you keep a clear communication with all the caseworkers that are involved, and the CASAs and the parent aides and everything. So that's been my experience so far with foster care. Please let me know if you have any questions. I'll continue to keep this updated, probably more every like 3 months, because we don't really have updates before that. We don't really know. This is our first time going through this, and so we're not really sure what to expect or what to happen after our first 3 month. Our little guy just turned 1, so that was really exciting. We threw him a little birthday party. And he got to celebrate with his mom and grandma too last week, which was really exciting. And now we just kind of get back into the groove and wait. You know, he's got some doctor's appointments he has to go to. He has a tongue tie, so we're going to kind of get that taken care of, and all little small things like that, like just normal parent stuff, which I don't know, might be kind of boring if I just blog about that or vlog about that. But if you guys have any questions about the process based on kind of what's happened in the past, and then if I can elaborate on that before his 6-month hearing in December, then please let me know. If not, I'll update you guys in December.